So I'll ask everybody or invite you to either close your eyes or just gaze somewhere and get comfortable. Just find a comfortable spot. Um, and really, it's just about presence more than anything. So if you just kind of, like I said, close your eyes, get your feet on the ground, get yourself in a comfortable position, whatever that might be for you. And I like to do 3 breaths. And what I do is like 4 seconds in through the nose and 4 seconds out through your mouth. So just slow it down just for a second and just focus on that. Do that 3 times, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. So we'll do that together. All right. And before you open your eyes, just kind of stay with that for a minute. That's just a chance to kind of get there and just kind of sense, what's going on, just like what's happening. Just take a quick vibe of your body, like go through your head. Is your brain going? You got a lot going on. What's happening in your chest, down through your body. Just you noticing anything. Just where are you? And I have just a couple questions before we kind of come back. And one is to be here for the next hour and 20 minutes. What do you need to put aside, right? We're all coming from different places. We've got a lot going on, different time zones. Is there emails? Is there some work thing? Is there family? Whatever it is there something that you can just put on the shelf? So just what is that will allow you to just get focused and be here? The second question is if you leave in an hour and 20 minutes and you got what you came for, right? You can be anywhere right now and you're here. If you leave, and what would that be? What are you here to get? Why are you here? Or what's your intention for being here? And then finally, so we took a quick moment to just sense what's happening. Where are we? Kind of put some stuff aside. What do we want? If there was one word that could kind of summarize that, where you are, what's going on, what you want, just a word that kind of you think really owns what's going on for you right now, what would that one word be? So I'm gonna take a second and think about mine. All right, and when you're ready, come on back. And some of us have our cameras on, so I can see when you're back. Others do not, but you have reactions. You notice at the bottom there's reactions. You can also like throw your hand up, like give a thumbs up. You can see just to show like, hey, I'm back. So the final thing we're going to do, and before I hand it back over to Jimena, is if you are in what I call the Brady Bunch view or the gallery view, right, we have all the boxes, and you hover over your name, there's 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner. If you click on that, it says rename. You can go down to rename. So this is great. If you go in there, and what I'll say is take out your last name and replace it with your word. All right, so I'll do mine right now. So you can see mine just went to Craig transition. So before we hand it back to Jimena, yeah, we did this grounding exercise. You may or may not, I think people tend to like it. It gets us here. But however, I also wanted to call out the fact that I'm sharing it too as an exercise that some of you might take with you. And what I've found is I've done this quite a bit. It's pretty powerful. Even if it's in a small team meeting, especially online, when you can look at a screen and see kind of where people are, it really will dictate and help the flow of the meeting. Oftentimes we go into meetings, some people are carrying some stuff in, and we never really know that. Could you imagine if everybody had a meeting and had a badge on that said happy or kind of like not here right now or whatever it might be? So through the rest of our meeting, we can look up and you kind of get a sense for people around where they are energetically. And I found it to be really powerful. You can change your name throughout. You can do it in different stages. It's simple. And it has a big impact throughout a meeting. So wanted to share that. Thank you for letting me walk you through it, and I will hand it back to Jimena.
Thank you so much, Craig. So yeah, that is one of these tips that I picked up from Craig specifically that I think is really interesting and just kind of, helps us be here and try to set everything aside, because especially in this remote environment, we are probably more likely to like veer off and do something else while in the middle of a meeting. So I think it's a good practice and one of these tips that we'll share throughout the rest of this. So to start off, I think given that we've just met Craig briefly, I'll introduce him a little bit more and then let him tell you more about himself. So I'm going to introduce each of the 3 panelists. So actually, I was introduced to Craig a couple of months ago as Craig is currently building a community called Culture First, and I'll let him tell you more about what that is. But Craig was looking for people to help create a chapter in South Florida. And through, a couple like different routes, he ended up with me. Actually, Maria helped him, pass it along to myself. And I was introduced to this world of culture first and to Craig. And I really just felt so connected to everything that he's working on that I thought, and particularly around this culture piece and this human connection piece, that it was really a no-brainer for me to ask Craig to join us today. He is a people scientist, which is a very fantastic title, at Culture Amp. As he mentioned before, he's in San Francisco. So Craig, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about you beyond what I've just said that might be relevant for everyone here.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple things about me. I grew up in Florida, grew up in Orlando. I went to University of Central Florida, and I was in the Air Force. So I think it's an important part of my story, which first brought me to California years ago, and then I did return after I graduated. My journey professionally has been, a windy one, but I eventually went back and got my master's degree in organizational psychology. Just really passionate and fired up about this idea of changing the world via the workplace. That's been kind of my lifelong passion, and my purpose is to help the world work better by improving the places we work. That led me through a group of companies. I was at LinkedIn prior to Culture Amp, and now at Culture Amp for about 3 years. And I'm on our people science team, which is a team of organizational psychologists. And for the first couple of years, I really worked with our clients. We are a technology company. Our tools help companies assess, understand, and take action towards building strong cultures. For a long time, it was around engagement and onboarding and assessments, and we've moved into performance management, manager one-on-one. So please go to cultureamp.com. You can learn more. I will say that we started building a really strong community. We've done amazing events, and in 2019, we asked ourselves, how can we go bigger? How can we really leverage this community we've built of people that feel the same way? They're looking to change the world via the workplace. And that's when we decided to build this Culture First community. So we launched culturefirst.com. We created a community team. And my piece on that was building our in-person event, and starting to build our chapters. And we kicked that off at the end of 2019. COVID hit. And I think this ties into what we're going to be talking about today, because we were building these in-person events around the globe, and all of a sudden COVID hit. What do we do? And my year has really been defined by transitioning that and how do we launch and continue to grow this community virtually. At first we were a little nervous, but it's been pretty amazing. We're at 30 chapters now. We're getting ready to do another big push. So I think we'll probably get to 60, 70 by the year's end. And it's been a pretty amazing journey. So yeah, that's a short version of kind of where I've come and where I am today. So thanks, Amanda.
Thank you, Craig. So next I want to introduce Monica, and it's based on who's on my screen. So Monica, she actually is currently going through our growth acceleration program at the Venture City, and she's the CEO of Squadra. And I'll let her tell you a little bit about Squadra. But the reason why I was, very excited to have Monica here is one of the first things that I experienced when meeting Monica through this program is the way that she shared feedback with us. And I thought it was in such a constructive, and even without even knowing each other that well, like she was very comfortable with, giving us feedback that helped us improve the way that we do things for the rest of our companies as well. And I just thought, wow, this is a person who really cares about these things. And obviously I should have known that given what she's building as a company, as a product, but I really felt that there was something special with Monica, and I wanted to have her also give her point of view in this session. So Monica, if you want to say a few words about yourself as well.
Absolutely. Hey, Jimena, and hello, everybody. It's great to be here. Jimena, you can see that my word is grateful. So I'll start by saying I'm super grateful for all the words, the kind words you just said. And just to give everybody just a sort of a brief background. So I was born in India, and I lost my mother when I was very young. I was 4 years old. And the legacy that she left to me was right from the beginning, from a very, very early age, I learned how to build resilience. And we know now it's a muscle that can actually grow over time. And so the loss of my mother was actually one of the greatest gifts I've ever had, because it allowed me to start from a very early age building this muscle that's just so incredibly important, working in teams, working for yourself, going to school, whatever it is. I started off my career as an investment banker. I worked at JP Morgan for many years in New York. And then when I met my then boyfriend, now husband, we decided, let's go do something totally crazy and go off the grid. And we weren't so into the sort of career path of, you know, money leads to money, leads to more money. We wanted to get off that train in a big way. So we went to the Caribbean. We founded a restaurant, and I taught myself how to cook. And the great thing about that is not so much that I actually learned how to cook, although we worked really, really hard in the restaurant and made it successful over the course of, you know, 9 years. But I really learned that each of us has an incredible ability to teach ourselves pretty much anything that we want if we just put our minds to it. And that was an incredible lesson for me that I learned through that experience, other than having just a fantastic time building a business together with obviously somebody I really cared about. And then fast forward to about 3 years ago, when I had the opportunity to go to Dubai, sort of going back to my original professional start in finance. And I was invited to be the CFO of a company in Dubai. And it turned out to be the biggest professional mistake of my life. It was an unmitigated disaster. I moved my entire family, my 2 dogs, my kids. And the reason it was a disaster is because I actually worked on a team that led me to lose all my self-motivation. And I actually consider myself someone who's like super highly motivated. I always have been. And the immediate reaction, those of you who are on the call that are women, you'll know that one of the things that we do as women is we blame ourselves. And that's what you always do first. But as I did more research about the nature of the team that I was on, what was it about this team that led me to lose motivation? And the more research I did, I found out that I was certainly not alone. There were a lot of other people. In fact, this is a problem on a global scale, that 85% of the workforce actually lacks motivation in their work. That just means they're not happy. And so as I really started to try to understand what the causes of that were, it became very clear that there are fundamental motivational drivers within each of us as human beings. And these are the factors that were missing on that team. They meant so much to me that I actually built a company around this. And that's my startup called Squadra. It's a motivation app for teams.
Thank you so much, Monica. I didn't know a lot about you, so it's really nice to have heard it. So last but not least is Bárbara Alves. She's actually in Portugal, so we have quite a little international panel today. And Bárbara also is part of the companies that have gone through our growth program and recently graduated. And Bárbara looks after the sort of business, but also the kind of HR responsibilities. And one of the things that I remember most about Bárbara as well is just her, and I think you'll pick up on this when she starts speaking, but just her energy and enthusiasm and kind of positivity. And particularly we had a session early on in the pandemic days when we were all just trying to figure out how to make this work from home thing happen or work. And she shared a lot about what Climber, the company that she works for, had implemented to kind of keep people engaged, keep the fun going, because they are quite a fun team. They enjoy each other's company. And so I thought, oh wow, like she's got so much energy and passion for this. I'd love for her to come and share her perspective here too. So, and I learned recently that she's also just completing her sociology degree, if I'm not mistaken, which also is super interesting for this topic. So Bárbara, I'd love to hear a little bit more from you.
Thank you, Jimena, and hi everybody. I'm quite nervous because I hate to speak in English. I'm not so good to speak, so please text me if you don't understand anything that I can say. So I'm Bárbara, I'm from Portugal. I'm working now at Climber. Climber is a software startup, so I work with most of engineers, so it's quite difficult and challenging, but most of my path during my studies, I studied sociology and social education and all of humanities, so my background is humanities. So my passion, or my biggest passion, is people, because I truly believe that people is the most powerful resource that we have to work and to achieve everything. So it's like I'm super passionate about it, and every time in all the jobs that I had or experience that I had, it's like, how can we get more perspective between each other in order to grow and to take into consideration all of our essences, motivation, purpose, and to take our potential to to each other to create a puzzle and to create a big picture. So it's like at Climber, I'm working as business office manager. So I'm managing all the human resources, finance, and a lot of stuff, different stuff. But it's kind of challenging, but it's super cool for me because it's like completely different, the background, because all of them are engineer. Yeah, sorry. So it's super challenging because, as you know, those profiles are quite specific or special. So sometimes it's quite difficult to create this type of human connection, and more in this situation that we are obligated to work remotely. So it's been challenging. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. And by the way, that was perfect. So
I was gonna say I'm giving a reaction right now.
Yeah.
Barbara, that was
Sorry.
awesome.
Yeah, I need to improve it.
no,
No,
really,
it was
honestly,
amazing.
perfect. So thank you all three for introducing yourselves. Hopefully the rest of you here get a good idea of the backgrounds and kind of what each of the different perspectives that they can bring. So before we jump in, I just wanted to offer a bit of a reflection that I've had in the last couple of days while preparing for this specifically. And we've been hearing a lot about how people feel that the human connection is being lost because we are remote and because we don't get to see each other and be in the same room as often. Maybe some of you in Europe are already being able to do that. Lucky you, but in the US, not so much. I attended a panel last week, and one of the panelists said a comment that, actually, we are probably more humanly connected than ever before. And by that, we mean there's this like blend of personal life and business life that has never been so blended. Right now we can see some of your homes in the background. You might get a cameo from a dog or a child or a partner. And that's something that never happened in our offices before. That would have been super weird. So, I feel like the level of empathy has had to kind of, be kicked up a couple notches. And we actually are now more connected as human beings and not so much as, colleagues. So I think that for me, the reflection that this lady had was like, wow, yes, she's so right. It's about the way that we position this and we envision this. So it's more of a reflection of my own, but I'd love, for you to kind of have that perspective and I know everyone's situation is different. So but actually, think of this as actually a way to connect more. I've probably met more people in the last couple of months because I can now meet people from all over the place, like Craig, because of this situation. So it is something that I am grateful for. So anyway, with that thought, we'll jump into some of the questions. So to start, I think this is kind of a hot topic that everyone keeps talking about, but the idea of remote work, right? The idea of remote work, not necessarily in a pandemic constraint, but just in general. For my panelists, were you believers in this remote work or distributed team format pre-pandemic? And if so, why or why not? Anyone can go first. Barbara, I see you have, go for it.
Okay, so I was not a believer for sure, because for me it's quite difficult to understand how can I keep or reflect our culture or engage people with our culture on a virtual way. So it's like, for me, it was like, oh my God, I shared with Jimena. Sorry, can you spell your name? Because I never know how to spell it. Jimena. Okay, sorry.
H sound.
Yeah. So I shared with Jimena that I made an interview for a Portuguese or a Spanish company. And they asked me, Barbara, how do you think is the most challenging or most challenge of work remotely? And I said, oh my God, it's impossible. How can we keep our culture, our values? How can we transmit it? Because like most of our behaviors that we have our physical office, they reflect our culture and behaviors and values. So I was like, oh my God, it's impossible to work remotely and to keep all of these that is like the core of our company present. So I was like, oh my God, in panic. And when COVID came, I was like, oh my God, no, it's real. I have to keep all culture and values. So I'm now a believer that it's possible. So it's like, I think it's a good challenge for us that treat people or manage people or take care of people, in order to see this as an opportunity of reinvent the ways we work, the culture, the values, and so on. So I'm a believer because now I implemented some cool stuff, and I can see that the team is living the values and the culture besides that. So it's like, it's okay. Now I'm a believer, and I believe that is a good opportunity to reinvent ourselves and to see that it's not only the people that we have that are a good potential, but it's like how we can reflect that potential through different platforms, and how can we take the most of that potential through platforms, through virtual spaces. So it's super cool. No.
No, thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. So a non-believer turned, believer, but with some proactivity in there. Monica or Craig, any thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I'll go next, and I'll reiterate basically what Bárbara said from a slightly different perspective. So in our case, we were actually born remote. We're an international team, and even pre-COVID, we were very much dispersed globally. So among Pakistan, Barcelona, I'm the only one in Barcelona, and we have one person in London. And what's really interesting, so here's a crazy fun fact, that we have a developer team of 5, and I have never met them. And Debbie in London has never met them. And yet we both feel that they are part of our extended family, very much so. And I think, to Barbara's point, it really speaks to the power of human connection against all odds, right? And that it really is worth the effort, no matter whether it's COVID or whether it's some other crisis that, surely will come tomorrow, seeking ways to build that human connection, despite not being sort of physically present. It's doable, and it's totally worth the effort.
All right, very good. Nice. Craig.
Yeah, I'll jump in just real quickly here and say, a couple things. One is, I think, being in San Francisco in the Bay Area, technology, it probably skews more over the last many years towards virtual, has been in kind of the ethos. A lot of the companies I've worked for have been global, so I've seen it. So if I wasn't a believer, I've slowly kind of over time, I just experienced it. But earlier in my career, I worked in higher education, and I started with a company we were doing coaching for college students. And at the time, this is probably 16 or 17 years ago, we were coaching students that were online students. And at the time, there was this clear division. There were those that were going online. It was a group of students that were trying something different and alternative. And then there was like the traditional education. And it was right at the cusp, and I watched those two blend. I don't know that many students today would say that they're fully online or fully in person, any student. So I feel kind of that's helped for me. I feel it's the same thing we're seeing in the workplace, that we used to have this world of like, oh, you're remote. Oh, you work in an office. And I think this is just accelerating it completely. I don't know if we'll ever go back to realize you will have fully remote workers, and you'll have people that still work fully in offices for jobs or for preference. But I think we're going to see a massive shift in a blend when we come out of this, where we're not even going to ask that question anymore. It's just going to be a mix of, we can be virtual, we can be in person, and being more intentional about where we are and why, versus we just go there because. And that's what I hope to see, and I expect to see.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I think before there was this challenge with having a mix of the team, like the co-located and then the distributed, and it felt like the people who are distributed feel a little bit more disconnected because of that. But I think this shift actually might make us more aware of those things that make them feel disconnected, and actually proactively try and fix that. So that's a really good point.
I don't know if I can add something.
Of course.
Yeah. So I was thinking when they were talking that one thing that is super important for me, and that makes me believe that it's possible to work all those issues that I point out virtually, is like that our team is super small, and our team is super dependent of each other. So it's like they point out as the most important thing of our culture is like, they like each other, they like to work with each other. So it's like, for me, it's super important that I should be a believer of the work remote work. It's possible, and we can bring the human connections to it. Yeah.
Very good point. Thank you. So to move on to the next question, again, for all three of you, whoever wants to chime in on this, but in your respective companies or maybe in your individual role, what's been the biggest shift? Obviously, aside from the physical space that surrounds you, but what's been the biggest shift since going into this virtual environment that you've had to kind of like, pivot on?
I can.
I mean,
Oh my
go
God.
ahead.
Maybe we just go in order. Barbara, Monica, Craig.
That's
Okay,
good.
sorry. No, I'm thinking that I can talk in my own role because I'm like the person that mediates everyone and that knows what is going on around all the team and each people. So in my role, it's been difficult, or the main shift that I did is like I need to create this own connection with each other virtually. So like the meetings that I had, like one-to-ones and other type of meetings, like to understand or to feel each person, to understand if they are okay, if there is something passing by or whatever. I have to create everything online. So it's like the most shift that I did is like to understand and to have a sense. I don't know how to say this in English, but it's like a sensing of how is everyone going, and to understand if they are all right, if they need anything, if they are passing for something in their homes. And it's quite difficult because when we are human, it's super easily at the office, like to grab a coffee and, oh, let's talk a bit, 5 minutes, and just to understand how is everything going. And virtually it's quite difficult, but I'm trying to manage it.
Yeah, so I think it's about being more like proactive about it, right? And not waiting for like chance encounter that might happen at the office.
Yeah, because it's like when you are at office, you can have a vision or you can prevent, but it's like when you are virtually, you are not always face to face, like every day. So you have to go and organically go and prevent it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Monica, but what about you guys?
Yeah, so as I said, so in our case, having been born remote, so to speak, it wasn't so much of a major change for us per se. We'd already pretty much built up this muscle, and it had been pretty well trained over the last couple of years. But I would say that our challenge is more around not necessarily being remote or not remote, but it's a challenge around making sure that we're always caring human beings towards one another. And I think, that's a challenge for all of us, it's just the nature of being who we are. And if there is a shift within our team, it's to try to really be very rigorous about more personal touch interactions, right? Even though they can't be personal, rather than less. So for example, to just give you one example, we've moved from, we used to have one team call per week, and then we used to interact on Slack the rest of the time. And in fact, what we've now moved to is a daily stand-up that's on video. And so we actually see each other, even though it's not physically present, but we actually see each other every single day. And that's a very, very different interaction than obviously just what might happen on text messages. So I think it's about not just increasing the number of personal interactions you have, but making sure that within each of those interactions, you're being as human as possible and exercising the emotional intelligence.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So some good tips there around, maybe switching to daily stand-ups within your teams. And Barbara's point as well is one-to-ones, which we personally have interested here very, we like to talk about that a lot, but I think it's important and it can be used across all company sizes, I would say. Craig.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, like the shifts, I think a lot of people have experienced going, having these physical interactions and moving to fully virtual. I could speak about the culture amp side because I am part of an organization, but I'll lean more towards what I was doing with community, right? We decided to build this community. It was in person. I mean, that was the whole point. We're a very experience-driven organization. We did lots of events, and that's what led to wanting to build this community so more people could run these events. I think the shift was really, you know, when it first happened, there we were building this whole thing about, you know, what is it going to look like and once a quarter, and we're going to run these events. And then this happened. And I will say at first it was like, oh my gosh, everything we're building, it just, is this upended everything? And in a way it had, but we leaned on something that the people at IDEO, you know, talk a lot about, which is how might we? Okay, how might we do what we're trying to do in this new environment, which is a really great framework to stop, you know, just there we are, this is what we're dealing with. And I think it was really leaning into, instead of the flaws or the problems, real or not, in virtual, and I'll be honest, I like in person, that's what I was building. So at first it was like a gut check, like, okay, well, how might we, like, aside from is it better or the same, use virtual? So I think it was more of how can we create those connections? I mean, even the thing we just did in the beginning with the names, the curious, the anxious, what I'm seeing right now, or me in transition. It would be great if you walked into a room and did it, and like I said, with name badges, but you also walk into a room and can see people's body language, who came in late, who came, you know, we've lost that. So something simple like this. So just really being on a journey of exploration of how to create online virtual events, allowing people to connect, and then translating that into the community, Amanda, like we've worked on. How do we help others put on these events? You know, like you'll see in a minute, breakouts, like things that kind of change it up, and freeing ourselves from the limitations of virtual and saying, how do we leverage it? We worked with some consultants early on. Right away, we knew we needed to. We put on trainings for our clients and for our community. And you know, always learning and growing, you know, and when I hear you sharing some of the things that you've picked up from us that I've picked up somewhere else, it just really excites me, because yes, this is not the same. However, I think sometimes the story is it's not the same, therefore we can't do it. And I've found it's not the case. I've had some really powerful online connections. It's just some creativity and opening your mind and willing to try something like a grounding exercise, which might be awkward, or a check-in before you get right into the meat of it and seeing what's going on. So that's what we've come up with. Just really asking that question: how might we, instead of why we can't.
Thank you. That's awesome. And look, I'm glad in one way there's like a gratefulness, because I don't know that we would have met would this not have been the reality that we're living in. Maybe,
It's true.
possibly, maybe just later. So anyway, so the next question was going to be around your biggest challenge, but I think you all kind of answered that in a way already. So I'm going to do kind of a two-parter, and is if there is a challenge that has maybe been the most difficult that you haven't mentioned yet, then would love to hear what that's been and what your plan to overcome it has been, if you have already. But also kind of tying into the next question is, we'd love to hear what you guys are doing for fun. Like, how are you keeping the culture alive, whatever your individual cultures might be? And you know, practical things that people in here can actually go and then maybe tomorrow just implement it directly with in their own companies. So as usual, starting with Barbara. So if you don't have a challenge you've mentioned, and then if not, go into the fun tips piece.
I can share that's the biggest challenge for me, at least. It's like most of the ones that I always spoke about, but it's like when the equilibrium between the people that are super shy, and we have to respect their individualities, and people that they can share. And sometimes it's quite difficult put this balance between those two. I think that is the most challenge part for me, because it's like it shouldn't be obligate someone to do nothing or to put micro on or the camera on, but it's like it's super difficult to manage this part of the personal side and like the company interests also. So it's quite difficult for me sometimes to manage it. Regarding the things that we have done a lot of stuff, quite funny stuff. So we used to work with Slack. And as soon as we started from home, we changed to Discord. Discord is used to game or gaming, something like that. I don't know. But it's like we changed because Discord allows us to use the voice. So to be more real and more connected, it's super easy to use, like for voice, for video. So we changed our channel and we start using Discord. It was the first biggest change that we made after COVID or after to come home. then we created different channels. For example, we have a channel that calls "Where am I?" So consider that we are at home and we don't see each other. So we have a channel where we say, or where we share, like, "Hi, good morning. So I'm working from now." Or for example, "I'm going to the supermarket. So in 10 minutes I'm here, and you can count on me, like, to work." We have other channel like music. And in that channel, it's like someone that wants to share his or her playlists on Spotify. He or her puts there, and we hear each other all together, the same playlist, and we make comments like, "Oh, you are hearing funk. Oh, so strange," something like that. It's just to keep our like connection on. Also, we have like a team, or some colleagues want to do fitness. Now is yoga, and our CEO deliver us yoga classes on Saturday morning. So it's super cool because we have a group, and that calls Climber Fits, and we put her ear there when we meet to have classes. And more stuff that we have, it's like all Mondays, we have after lunch, we have a meeting that is what you did on weekend. So there it's like, it's super chill and informal. It's just to share what you did on your weekend. It's like a coffee time for we share what we did, just to keep together and to keep that proximity together. More things. We have like the one-to-ones, we keep it, but virtually. So I met each one of them. More things that we do is like, I'm now trying to do a team building virtually, but I'm preparing, not yet deliver it, not realize it yet, but I'm trying to. So the most things is that we are changing everything that we could have like physically on virtually. Sometimes it's not easy. For example, the Monday meeting that we have to talk about the weekend, not everyone goes. It's like for once to share or to have that time, it's like, feel free to join and to share and to see each other, because sometimes what's happened is like our team, we have a development team and the sales team, and me, I'm from part of the admin team. So it's like sometimes sales and development team, they don't see regularly each other. So I'm trying to put this to see people, not just for the skills or the technical part, but see people from the personal part. Like, okay, I went to the beach yesterday and this happened, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I have a dog. For example, yesterday, they discovered that a person has a cat. So it is to bring like the personal part, not just the technical, but it's like to bring the personal items, because that connects also each other. I don't know, but I think we are doing.
That's awesome, man. You guys do a lot. That's really great. And keeping that momentum going is definitely hats off to you, because I know it can get difficult, especially when we're busy and we're so focused on getting our stuff done, and then life that goes around you as well. So thank you for sharing that. Monica, love to hear from you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So so in terms of just very briefly our challenge, so being an international team, we have, so our biggest challenge is trying to make sure that different cultures are treated in a very, very emotionally intelligent and sensitive way. So for example, as I mentioned, our developer team is all in Pakistan. And, it's obviously really important that we're always very cognizant and mindful of any cultural differences. So just as a very, very brief example, typically the Pakistani culture is one that's very hierarchical. And so it's actually the total opposite of how we work and how we structure everything that we do at Squadra. And so the newer, more junior members fear their superiors. This is just the way things work. And so it was really important that I put myself in their shoes, as did Debbie, who's obviously not from there, she's from the UK, to really understand what their learned behaviors bias them towards. And to try to really step into their shoes and make them comfortable that there's nothing to fear, that in meetings they can speak up openly. In fact, there's a great deal of psychological safety that we really try to, have in every single interaction. But it's not the normal for them, right? So to really understand sort of the point of view that they're bringing is hugely important. For Westerners, any Western hires is not an issue, because most likely the company that they're coming from, they probably were treated very similarly to say that they would be in another Western company. But that wasn't the case for the Pakistani developers. So moving on then in terms of kind of what we do, how we sort of keep the meetings engaged and interesting. And I think I'm going to go back to what Craig did at the very, very beginning, because it's really, I think, it's really basic and so simple, but this is really what we do. And if you think about it, so in the words of Daniel Goleman, he said, the more attention you pay, the more you care. And the more you care, the more attention you pay. And those are his words. The way I like to think about it is that our attention is the greatest gift we can give another person. The best way to make meetings interesting is to pay attention. Give the other person who might be speaking or listening your full attention. And that, to us, it really is the simplest and most effective way to have a really good meeting. Because if everyone's paying attention, you're giving each other the gift of mutual attention. The positive vibes start flowing because everyone is valuing the other person. I'm not thinking about what I need to do later, or my email, as Craig mentioned at the beginning, or what I want to say, because what I want to say is more important than what the person is actually saying right now. So to give undivided attention takes the meetings, we found, to a completely different level. And it really embodies the spirit of what Daniel Goleman called synchrony among the team.
So true and so hard. Got a little clap there, Edgar. So hard to stay paying attention when we are bombarded with notifications and email and Slacks.
Totally.
So maybe another one of these tips is, where possible, turn them off, so that you are not setting yourself up for a trap of being pulled away from someone's attention. But I think you're so right. Giving someone the attention is like the greatest gift you could give them, and really is all about that human connection. So thank you. That's really powerful. Craig, on to you.
Yeah. Monica, I love what you just said. It was beautiful and so well put. Thank you for the way you summarized that. Look, the challenges I'm sure we faced, or some of the challenges I could repeat. So just a couple things that came up whenever I was talking. One is, and I was talking about this before any of this happened, about organizational values, and it's really the underpinning of, these are the core, and they should be simple. There should be a few of them that when in times of trouble, we can fall back and say, how are we behaving? What dictates our organizationally, right? We are coming together in organizations for a reason. So what's our vision? What's our mission? Where are we going? And what's our values? How are we going to get there? How are we going to behave? So one is I would relook at those if you have an organization. Number one, are your values solid? And number two, then it goes back to that, how might we? How in this situation might we live those values in a new way? I think our organization has done a really good job of that. One of ours is courage to be vulnerable. That's always been with us. Now we broke apart, but one of the things that we did before was we had a session we called it Culture Uncorked, where we'd come together to kind of put the work aside and see each other as humans. We used to do this in our offices. We started running those online. It's great, a place where people could still show up, especially in times like this, and say, aside from my work, I'm scared, I got kids, this is hard, those sorts of things. We created that safe space. And not that you need to do that, it's just an example of how can you start to look at your values, how do we behave? And I've always said that, in good times, it's really wonderful to have values. But values really, are you living them in the hard times? And that's when you know if your values, are solid. So I'd say that's one of them. The other one is, and I'm big on kind of trying to disrupt these hierarchical models and how organizations have structured for a long time. And where I'm going with that is I think that your organization collectively has these answers. Even in situations like Monica was talking about, you have to navigate the situation. Yeah, it's hierarchical. I mean, Team of Teams is a model we've looked at from the McChrystal Group. This was built in the military, but it's about decentralizing, allowing teams to be able to move and operate even in a hierarchical system. and like kind of unlocking. So what I'd say is, how can you help your organization unlock it, and letting go of this idea that the leadership has all the answers, and opening up this bigger thing. And something that blew me away was during Pride Month, one of our colleagues out of New York, I guess, had seen this somewhere else, where it was like this lip sync competition where people could put together videos, and it was brilliant. I mean, I didn't know what was going to come out of it, but some people put so much time into it. And we all got together on Zoom and watched it. We'd share. We did the regional. We did, we're out of Australia, so we had an Australian, a US, and an EMEA group. But not only was it amazing, it was really fun. I felt really connected to see the creativity and the videos people put together. It was fun. It wasn't work related. But the other thing they did was, throughout it, they started raising money. We raised like $10,000 across all of these. And maybe it's that whole thing about the value of giving. And I know this is different from what the question was exactly, but it just felt right to talk about that. It wasn't just that we came together to do something fun for each other, but someone was smart enough to say during it, can we raise money for some charities, and had a way for everybody to chip in as we were going. And I thought we'd raise a couple thousand. The fact that across this whole thing, we raised $10,000, it was probably one of the proudest moments of my organization. And in some ways, there's things I've seen, maybe because of how we respond in this, maybe the challenges forced us to step up, that things like that made me more proud than many of the things I saw a few years before. So I'd say get back to your values. How can you rethink your values in this situation, and how do you live your values in a new way? And the second is, how do you unlock it? Let your organization teach you. It's there. The answers are there if you empower people and give them the permission or the psychological safety to play and to try.
I love that. And actually reminds me that I'd like to give a shout out to one of my colleagues who's in here, Edgar, who has been taken on being like the official game master of Venture City and bringing a little fun to our meetings. And he's kind of, we've done like hangman and trivia and scavenger hunts and just lots of little fun things that we've been doing, just to kind of also, because we also are a team who enjoys being together. We have fun, we laugh, and being away from each other is hard because we don't get that as often. So, and Edgar's kind of like brought that in, and I've nominated him to, Culture Club president, which we laugh about, but it's just been fun to kind of do that. And that is not his day job. He has a lot of stuff to do, but he does this because he really wants to. So I think it's fun. So thank you. And one thing I wanted to mention, that I did come across a company recently, for anyone here who wants to bring a little bit of fun into their teams, but doesn't really know what to do or isn't great at running games. There's a company out of New York called Artly Working, which I'll link to their website in the chat in a minute, but it's run by actors who are currently facilitating sessions around like improv to kind of get people's creative juices flowing in their meetings and stuff like that. Anyway, I thought it was really fun, and the guy running it has some really great tips. So I'm gonna pop that in there if anyone is curious. So just to kind of
just one last thing, because the other point was very serious that I made, and here's a much lighter one. So one of the things that we do on our meetings, as everyone is paying attention, is there's always someone that takes a screenshot, and it is hilarious because they will then we'll take turns and we'll draw on it, we'll sketch, and we'll do thought bubbles and of what someone happens to be thinking just based on what their expression is, right? And we have a library of these now, and it is absolutely hilarious. And laughter is the best connector, as we all know.
Borrow that. We're definitely have to borrow that. Anyway, that's great. Thank you. So we are gonna actually take you guys into a bit of a breakout session in a couple minutes. But before we do that, there is one last question for the panelists. And beyond just like internally, right, looking inside your own company, how have you guys viewed the active virtual networking with people you don't know? How has that changed? And has it worked? Have you tried it? Have you gone to things like maybe like this, where we don't know a lot of people in this room? Would love to hear your thoughts on that before we actually do this ourselves.
I think it's been okay. I don't know how to say it, but it's like it's been normal because they are all introverted. So it's like it's for the internal organization and for external too. So the network also, but mostly our sales team and the admin team. They are more used to talk with externals or with the network. So it's normal for them to do this virtually, and like the sales virtually and so on. They improved a lot. And development teams still keep super intimidated regarding it, but they are not required to do it. So it's like, I don't know, it's not been a challenge from now. Let's see what is going on.
Thank you.
And sorry for my dog, because my dog just awake.
I love dog moms. I love it. Monica, any thoughts?
Yeah, just in terms of I actually have found it a bit easier than it was before. And I think the reason is because we're all at home, and we're sort of on kind of the same wavelength. Everybody's more or less in the same position. And I find that people are more available to meet, to do a remote video call. It just seems easier than the old way, which I don't even know we're ever going to go back to, which is traveling for half a day to sit through a 2-hour PowerPoint. I just don't see that world coming back anytime soon. And that's, I mean, good riddance, right? Because it's a complete waste of everybody's time. And so in our experience, it's been easier to get people's attention because we're all sort of we're suffering in the same way, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Absolutely. Craig, any additional thoughts? Oh, you're on mute.
There we go. First, I'd say it's interesting when you use the word networking. I remember that when in school and stuff, like the idea of networking, even me, and I'm a pretty hardcore networker, I guess you could say in some way. I think of connecting. And look, the other thing is, even before this happened, I worked at LinkedIn, and I did not work on the feed. It wasn't like I worked on that piece of the tool, but being internally at LinkedIn, and one of their values is connections matter. I just saw how they used it, and I think that really lit a fire in me. I will say LinkedIn has been the most powerful tool for me. I think I've built a bit of a brand. I think I have something beyond my company. I can reach out to so many people now and connect. I have so many interesting conversations because of LinkedIn. So I think it was there before, but I think what Monica just said, I feel the same way about. This right here used to be me getting on a plane, going to a conference, sitting on a panel, like networking, coming home. And, you know, there's times I laugh, I'll do this, I'll get off, and like I'm on a next call. Like the efficiency now is unbelievable. And I think both the efficiency, the captive audience, we have everybody's at home. Like all that wasted time wasn't just my wasted time. It was hard to get with people because they're flying and moving and doing these things. They're not anymore. And I would say to everybody on this call, this window will close at some level. This is a moment to connect with the people that are important to you. Who's somebody out there that you wish you could have a conversation with? Could you send them a note? Like LinkedIn gives you a certain amount of words and an invite. Make it personal and reach out and connect with those people that you think will enhance you and your world. It blows my mind. Jimena, you mentioned it, like the fact that we're in connection. There's so many people I'm connected to and in relationship with now, that I think this is just pushing us. And I think these tools are available to us. Like I said, I don't think of it as networking because that sounds like a daunting thing versus this is an opportunity to connect, and the efficiency and the intentionality is there. So, you know, how might you, right? How might you go a little bit stronger, or, you know, push yourself in that vulnerable place to connect with somebody that you think would really enhance your network? Set up a 15-minute call or 20-minute call. It's powerful. And like I said, I opened that up prior to this, and I think that helped in this, but to anybody now that wants more connection, now's the time. And you can recraft your career, you know, it's just such a awesome opportunity. And I think this moment it's one of the gifts. It's enhanced it and forced us to go to that place we might not have gone to otherwise before.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, especially for people who found traditional networking like awkward and they're shy. You know, like Barbara mentioned, shy people earlier. Sometimes networking isn't set up for shy people who can't just like walk up to somebody at an event and be like, hello, my name is so-and-so, versus now I could just send a message to someone and, you know, hopefully they'll reply. And I think more times than not, people will reply. So I think that's quite nice.
I would just say, as a LinkedIn person, like seriously, write that note. Don't just hit connect. Like I always read when somebody writes me a note to connect with me. And if it's thoughtful, I would say unless you're trying to really, it's a weird sales thing, I'm connecting with them.
Absolutely. Awesome. So the group has shrunk a little bit, and I wonder if it's because I said breakout session and everyone's like, ah. But for those of you that are still here, thank you, because we are going to do a really quick kind of connection piece now, because again, this would not be a human connection if we didn't actually allow that to happen. So we're going to go into small breakout rooms now that Maria is thankfully organizing. And really, we're just going to give you 10 minutes, and there's going to be about 3 per room. And myself and the panelists will also be kind of spread out throughout the rooms. And we really just want you guys to discuss, first introduce yourselves if you don't know each other, the people in the room, but also share maybe a little bit about what your biggest challenges have been during this time regarding like keeping that human connection, and maybe something that you feel like you've been able to take from this that you can like, what's your biggest like insight or takeaway that you think you might be able to implement. And then we'll come back into this main room and do a little bit of sharing. And then we'll have one last question for the panelists before we wrap up. And of course, if you use this time as well to kind of ask each other questions when you're in these rooms. All right, we'll just wait for a couple more people, and then we'll do a quick little share. If you nominate a person in your group to speak on behalf of everyone, just kind of share a little bit about what the discussion was.
I think we're gonna nominate Mario because he was so rudely cut off when we went out of the breakout room and came back to the main room. So he's gonna pick it up where he left off.
Okay. Are we all here? I can't tell. I think there was like 15 people, so we might be missing some, but maybe we'll just go ahead and get started for the sake of time. Mario, yeah, please.
It looks like we're down to 6 here. No, what I was saying is we were discussing the sort of the sales process and how it may have changed coming forward to where we are today. But the comment that I was making that I'm so cognizant of when I'm dealing with somebody and everything I do is virtual is just simply they're buying for their reasons, not my reasons. And if I don't take the time to find out what is the need that they want to have satisfied, and it's the reason that we're even talking, because with my company, and I don't know that everybody was in our call, but I'm the business development director for a hosted software tool that works with NGOs all over the US and Canada for the most part, and some in Australia. But we're blessed in that all of my potential new business are leads coming to us. They're not leads, they're people actually reaching out to us because of how we've structured our marketing and our, call it sales funnel, if you want to call it that. And so I know that if somebody contacts us, they have a need. And it's my job to figure out real quick, typically through what we call a qualifying call, just can I satisfy their need? Do they have a budget that it can afford us? Kind of run through a variety of things fairly quickly to figure out should this conversation move on, because I try to communicate that I respect their time. I obviously respect my time too, but I want to determine fairly quickly whether we can actually benefit them or not. And then we move on in the sales process from there.
Very interesting. Thank you. Very different from our room discussion.
I want to nominate Michael. And Michael, if you're willing, what you spoke about that really hit me. We didn't get a chance to go into it because whatever, we had 10 minutes, was the value of content. I think you're really on to something here, and you said you're kind of pushing against that at your organization, but getting away from selling to providing content. In these times, especially you do sales. So I just want to, if you're open, to share a little more about that, because I think it was really important.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my name is Michael Tovar, and I work for a company. We do sport equipment. I'm in charge of North American sales, and my job consisted of being in the road like almost every week across the country. And we were taking clients for dinners, doing trade shows, PR, sponsoring sport events, whatever. So we have been grounded since March 16. We can only drive across the state where we are. So we have to be creative, and at the beginning, our social media channels stopped. We were not promoting anything, but doesn't mean because we are in the pandemic, our companies are, dead. We have to do something, but there is so much free content out there. So everybody's fighting for our attention. So we are in the process of creating a podcast where we're going to interview coaches and athletes. We are using our social media channels to promote relevant content. It's like, how can people, keep training during the pandemic if you're not allowed to go back to your high school or your university where you used to train? We are planning to bring like a sports psychologist to deal with the stress and anxiety and frustration because they lost their career. We had some athletes that were qualified for the Olympics in Tokyo, and now that is postponed. So how they keep active and in good conditions when the games were moved for a year, and we don't know if they're going to happen. So like, that's, we set up our marketing department to do that. I don't want any word of us promoting our products. This is not the time to do that. I mean, we have to be there as a group, as a community, to grow together. And it is frustrating, but like, we have to think outside the box. I was explaining to Barbara, it's all about the experience. So like, we're trying to create like an app or a game, I don't know how, or a website, I don't know what to call it yet because we don't have it, where our clients could go and, let's say, you take a few pictures of your indoor gym or your whatever facility, and then you could play around and you could start designing your own facility. You could choose the type of flooring, lighting, seating, and I mean, it's kind of connecting with our clients virtually, but at the same time, like, and again, is my opinion. I was telling Craig, I don't think we're going to go back to whatever we call normal before, either we like it or not. Like, humans were reluctant to change, and we're fighting to go back to that, but I don't think it's going to happen. So we just have to accept it, move forward, and really, really think outside the box on how can we connect with our clients and making an experience. Like, some companies were doing this before in a different way. Like, I'm going to use Apple as an example. Like, I don't think too many people buy the Apple products at the store. People were going to the store for the experience. So we could do that with our products online. Like, Barbara works in tourism. I know that a company, Royal Caribbean, the cruise line, that's where I got the idea from, of this company here in Miami. They are doing a virtual reality where you could go into the cruise and, you could check how the rooms look and what's going to be your view. And they don't know yet when the cruises are going to sell again, but you could actively be promoting trips even before we know when we're going to be able to travel again. So that's, I think we have to be positive, and again, like, every day, like, keep thinking outside the box. There's so many things that are going to keep changing, and the companies that are going to succeed are the ones that are going to adapt faster. If we talking, like, oh, I remember the good old days, and blah, well, I don't think it's going to happen. So we just have to accept it and get the best out of the situation.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah, Michael, you weren't in our breakout session, but one of the things we were talking about is I was saying how I've been in sales forever, and I shifted over to what we would call an intangible sale here with this hosted software about 10 years ago. And when I first came in, I said, how do you sell thousands of dollars of this stuff and you don't even know who you're selling it to, and they don't even know you? They're taking a leap of faith that if they send you an ACH for $5,000 or $10,000 that you're a real company. And so my question would be, with what you do, and I don't totally know what your business is it possible that you could shift to a more virtual sales method and in fact be as if not more successful, but there's just resistance because of the players who need to make this shift are all used to doing it a different way? In other words, there's not somebody to move them along to try an alternative. Is that possible at all?
I think it's possible. I don't have all the answers today, but I think it's possible. And at the same time, I think that we have to be prepared for that, either we like it or not, because some of our clients feel comfortable. Let's say we are, as a company, they allowed me to travel, let's say next Monday, and I could jump in a plane and fly to Los Angeles. Like, my clients in Los Angeles may not be comfortable that I'm coming from Florida. So I have to respect that. Now, it's an internal fight. I mean, we're about to close a contract, like it's close to $1.5 million. And it's even here in my state, it's in Northern Florida. And we have not been there. We know the client, but we have not been there so far. And I have my project manager saying that he's going to drive there. I have my sales guy saying, I'm going to drive there. We have to sit down. This is an important contract. We have to do it face to face. And like, Yes, but the client, they have not requested our presence at that campus. So I think it's disrespectful for us to show up from 3 different states and force a meeting that might backfire as our strategy. Like if they want us there, they will ask us to. I am handling this account and I offer them, do you want us to go there physically and sit down? They say, no, not now. So we just have to deal with, but again, it's a challenge. I lose nights of sleep, trying to think how we're going to do it. But I think like whatever we're going to develop is going to be a hybrid situation. And we have to be prepared to conduct sales virtually from point A to Z.
Can I give you a thought on that? Or,
Sure.
well,
Yeah.
I don't want to dominate the conversation here. One of the comments that I made in our breakout that maybe took me a while to learn is a client buys for their reasons, and they also buy the way they buy for their reasons. And if somebody was telling me, I really don't want you to come here, I'd say, would you like to set up a great video conference? And, in other words, set up the technology on your end so you can accommodate selling them the way they want to be sold. That's what they're telling you. They don't want you to show up with a caravan. It sounds like they want to make the purchase, but you need to accommodate the way they want to do it, and they'll say yes. And I think sometimes there's resistance to, it took me a while to learn that. Sometimes the client's screaming out, yes, I want to buy what you're buying, and I'm sitting there plodding along the way that I normally sell when they're just saying, show me the damn contract and let's sign it. And I think sometimes we have barriers on ourselves saying, I can't do it this way or it won't work that way, when try it and it may be the best way you could do it.
No,
Just throwing that out.
I agree with you 100%. As a matter of fact, like my team, like I made the executive decision to send our lowest price from the beginning. Usually we send a price and we negotiate, we see who is in the game, where the price are bidding. And like, we have no time for BS here. I mean, like, this is our best price, send it out, that's it. I mean, we're not negotiating. We're not going to go down there. Now, I'm on board with that tactic of doing everything remotely. My team is not. So, but again, like it's a learning curve. It's the first time they're facing this situation. So I have to be patient with them and try to, like make them understand that it is possible to close a large contract remotely. So, and I guess as we have more of these examples coming up, they're going to be more used to it, because you're right. I mean, like if a client wants to do everything virtually, and we might get to the point that they may not be like a phone calls or video calls. It may be like an email or an application where you submit pricing and that's it, that's all. So whatever the clients or the market needs, we just have to adapt.
Great point. It's interesting. Your guys' conversation is very much like towards your clients, and I think ours was more internal. Lena, I don't know if you want to share like in a rapid fire way what our group was saying. There was only 3 groups, right? Is there anyone here that is not group has not been represented? So I'm conscious of time, so we have very little time. So if you want to lightning round, say what we talked about, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, well, our group was definitely internal team oriented. The thing I think we all noted was that if you've got a fun team, with interesting people, like as soon as the lockdowns happened, that all went away. Like all the fun, all the banter, it all just died off, and we ended up in this really, really intense, serious mode. So we were discussing all the ways to recapture the kind of joy in the work, because it's I think for a lot of us and a lot of these teams, it's basically gone right now. So some people mentioned like the games and the more performance oriented stuff, the people with the laugh when they're muted, and just some way to kind of bring back that human touch that we used to have, where you'd wander around and you would just talk to someone and make a joke. And that I think is where we still kind of struggle, and we're discussing that. So I think that's a work in progress, and especially if this stuff continues, we're really going to have to solve that.
Yeah, I liked Lane's quote, banter was the first casualty of COVID. We lost banter. So tweet that one out. So just to wrap up then, panelists, there was one last question for you all, but given the time, I'm going to challenge you to give us like the minimum amount of words answer, if even humanly possible, and then we'll kind of wrap up some of the tips. So when all this is back to normal, whatever that means, and we all know that's normal-ish, what do you hope will remain from this experience? What do you want to like not go back to, or rather positively will remain? In a couple of words, starting with Barbara, since you're always our first one.
I think what comes up in my mind is like not take anything for guaranteed. I don't know how to say it, but it's like, I think like in the physical space, it's easy to manage and everything because it's physical. You can see everyone, you can see the objects, everything that you need. But like, you can't take it for guarantee because it's like, yeah, from one day to another, you don't have anything. You don't have a physical space. So it's like work and adapt. I don't know, but when you ask the question, the quote that comes to my mind is like, don't take anything to guarantee. It's like nothing is guaranteed. I don't know what to say. Like,
no, for granted, but yeah, the sentiment is there for sure. Monica.
Yeah, on my side, I would just add that I think remote working has basically shown us that, well, but prior to remote working, there was kind of there tended to be a me at work and a me at home. And remote working has broken that barrier. And I think the thing that we should all take away is being our authentic self is always the right answer, no matter what environment we're in.
So true. Craig. You're on mute.
Monica, you said something that I was going to kind of the same idea. So I'll shift one other thing, which is a bit of a twist on that answer. And that is there's a really powerful force that keeps things going, which is inertia. And there's a book called Prime to Perform, which I really like. This is a moment in time where inertia has stopped. And I don't think we're going to have many opportunities like that. So what I want is, what will each of you do in this moment before the machine gets going again to help craft something that you would like to see? And what I think is a moment of opportunity that will close in again. So how do you want the world to be different, and how can you show up to be a little bit of that in this moment of opportunity?
Amazing.
Also, anybody, please, please follow me on LinkedIn. Like I said, that's my thing. So if you enjoy, want to stay connected with me, reach out via LinkedIn. Nice note, but I'll connect with you, and I'd love to stay connected that way.
He's got great content, so do follow him. Well, again, thank you guys so much for joining us, for staying till the end, and for participating in these breakouts. I think some of the things we've like, you know, specific tips, I think we've lived them through this meeting, starting from the grounding exercise all the way to changing our names with our words, using the breakout function. That's another one that I think is quite useful, especially for those of you in bigger companies that you can definitely utilize. And then some of the ideas that the fellow panelists have shared here, like the importance of the one-to-ones, the games, the connection. And for those of you speaking about sales, I think that's such an interesting perspective. And really what I heard from both of your conversations was listen to the customer and what they want, and respect their what they're feeling. And I think, you know, you build that human connection before that sort of sales transaction. And I think that's the way to, you know, get to where you want to go. So again, thank you to the panelists, all three of you.
thank you.
And we hope to see you in any future sessions with us here.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you, everybody.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.